Hi, my name's Dave Holmes. Welcome to cyclingphysio.com. I'm going to talk about a pretty interesting product that I got to review this year, and it's called the Ithlete. And what makes it such an important device is it's actually one of the first reliable ways I've come across of quantifying fatigue. So we've got power meters now. We've got this software to analyze our power data. We can come up with things like training stress scores or bike scores or intensity factors, and we finally can sort of quantify how hard a workout was. But what is missing, in my opinion, is how do we quantify how our body has reacted to that? And when you look at training plans, they tend to have this very sort of systematic build, rest phase that looks great on paper, but actually has no real validity because it doesn't take into account the natural variability between athletes. So yeah, it looks great to say, okay, you're going to build over a course of 3 weeks and rest for 1 week. But in reality, what if you're the type of athlete that can only tolerate a workload for 2 weeks, but you'll recover in 4 days of rest? So what we really need to be looking for, and what Ithlete I think has found a piece of this puzzle, is how much work can you tolerate before you must rest, and how long should you be resting for? So that's sort of why I think this is an important tool. Let me just briefly take you through how the tool works. What you need is you send away for one of these little transponders that hooks up to a heart rate monitor. And this goes into your smartphone depending on the type of phone that you've got. And as far as the heart rate monitor goes, it has to be compatible with this. Many of the heart rate monitors out there are, and they've got a list of compatible heart rate straps on their website. Now if yours isn't compatible, then you've got to buy one of theirs. After that, you download the app. All in, if you needed to buy every single piece, you're still going to be looking at around $100. When compared to, I mean, that's not even the cost of a good tubular tire. And in comparison to how expensive power meters are, the valuable data you're going to be getting out of that, that is a drop in the bucket if you're a serious road racer or triathlete. Now, what happens is in the morning, the first thing you do, you get up, you put your heart rate strap on, you plug your little gizmo into your phone, and then it immediately, once it's found your heart rate, it gives you a prompt to breathe. Now, what it's going to measure is called your heart rate variability. Now, what heart rate variability is the natural increase and decrease in your resting heart rate as you breathe. So when you breathe in, your heart rate speeds up a bit. When you breathe out, it slows down a little bit. Now, heart rate variability is something in cardiology that they've been studying for a long time. Irregularities in it can accurately predict all sorts of things like heart disease. But from an athletic standpoint, you can measure the impact of your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So that's sort of your fight or flight response versus your sort of digest turkey supper response. That would be the parasympathetic response. But they're correlated to fatigue levels. And if you're in an overtrained state, we're going to start seeing a drop in your heart rate variability. So what you get after a minute of this sort of breathing in and out in time to the little icon on the screen of your phone is a score. And then you can go from there to the screen that shows sort of your weekly or monthly or total sort of progress. And it's a line graph, and you can see if your score is where it's normally at, a little bit above, a little below, or a lot below. Now there's some interesting things that show up. When I look at my data, I plotted it over a 3-month course after recovering from an injury, and I got this the day I got injured. So it's very depressing at first to watch my scores drop as I lost fitness over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. But it was also very encouraging to see that number immediately start coming back as soon as I was able to start training again. And after a really hard day of training, your number will drop. And what's great about it is they've kind of quantified how big a drop is something you need to worry about. And it's a very simple stoplight system. If you get a blue or a green, that means you're good to train. Green means you've had a sharp increase in your heart rate variability score, so you should be out there having a good day. A blues means you're sort of steady state, you're where you're at the day before. Yellow means you're tired, your body's showing some signs of fatigue and it's a good day to take an easy training day. And you can even get a red score, which means you're sick or you're overtrained, and certainly it's a day you should not be training. Now, speaking of being sick, I was sick 2 or 3 times over the course of this 3-month plotting graph, and I can tell you reliably the day before I got sick, each time my number was way down in the red, or at least a big yellow number, and I thought, oh, that's funny, I didn't feel sick yet, but later that day I was like, huh, that gizmo actually predicted that I was going to get sick. Now, what I think is the most important part of the Ithlete, and something that's going to take some work for each athlete that gets one, is to correlate your training volume, your training intensity, and quantifying that in some way. Now, the bike score or the TSS is a great way of doing that. You can kind of look at how hard the workout was, and starting to look for what is the hardest workout you can tolerate and not see a big drop. Because what you want to try and do, depending on what phase of your training you're in, if you're trying to build, what you really want to know is how much work can you tolerate in a week without your weekly score dropping too much and being able to bounce back from. Or maybe you want to go into a bit of a hole. You want to do a 3-week build. So then if you, at the end of the week, your heart rate variability hasn't really changed from the beginning of the week, you know that you've had a decent block of training, but it's not actually put you into a slightly overtrained state. And so I think where the work needs to be done is figuring out what is the dosage or the volume of work that we can actually withstand, and then how quickly do you bounce back from that. So currently I am not aware of any software that will integrate this data for you. It's for the technologically astute. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this and looking at what is your sort of ideal score to produce a fitness change that you're looking for. Used properly, I think this is an invaluable tool. Obviously you can see I'm excited about it. Now I will say there's one thing that was a little bit funny that I contacted the Ithlete people about, and they gave me a pretty good answer for. On days where I went out and absolutely drilled it and was exhausted the next day, my legs were sore, I couldn't even think about getting on a bike, I quite often would get a high score telling me that all was good, go out and race, you're going to have a PB. And obviously that's not true. But when I discussed it with the Ithlete team, they actually had a pretty reasonable explanation. It was what I was in, it was in a state of acute adrenal fatigue. So not the chronic adrenal fatigue that you might read of, but just after those days, the way that your adrenal glands have functioned from such an intense workout, your reading is going to be a little bit off. But that's not something that's going to be confusing. You know when you're in that state, you know when you can't ride the next day. And if your number is way higher than you expect, then that's probably our explanation there. I'll point out that that only happened with really hard and intense workouts. And when I looked at sort of the steady state base building workouts, this thing was really reliable. If you rode for 4+ hours, your number was going to be down. And it was actually very enlightening for me to find out, so what is the amount of sort of recovery or base riding that brings my number up the next day. And I've been using that to taper for my events so far this year, and it's been working really well for me. So on the website you'll see some photos of the different screenshots that you actually get with the product, as well as a link to their site. I welcome you to try this technology out. I really think that it's going to change the game for a lot of you.